Hey guys, Adam here. Grace is still not feeling great, so I figured I would whip up a quick Star-Lord necklace for her Star-Lord cosplay while she's out. In a previous video where Grace and I stumbled through Fusion 360, Grace modeled this necklace and did most of the hard work. If you want to see that full video, go ahead and click the link in the description. Since the model was already done, all I had to do was scale that model slightly and send it to my 3D printer. I used the Prusa edition of Slicer with the default settings just to see how it was, and it came out fine. I think I still like Simplify 3D more, but it's always good to try new software. Now that the print is finished, you can see while it looks good, it still has some gaps and print lines. And in order to remedy this, I grabbed some trusty 220 grit sandpaper and went to town. Since it was a flat piece, I decided just to lay it flat on the sandpaper and move it in circles. After the top was sufficiently sanded, I went over the sides and the back accordingly. As you can see, it's not totally smooth yet, and you can see that there are still untouched layer lines in the recesses of the print, and I decided this would be a great first project to try XCC 3D on. XCC 3D is a coating that you mix up and lightly coat prints with to level out layer lines. It's not a perfect science, but for this model I thought it would do the trick. I poured out my A and B to the ratios listed on the instructions and mixed thoroughly. I started by lightly coating the recesses and tried to get a relatively even amount throughout. Occasionally I would put a little bit too much in the gaps, but it was really easy just to coax back out with the brush. I also took this opportunity to coat the raised part of the necklaces, since it would act as a little bit of a gap filler as well as give me a nice and smooth finish. And ta-da! It works great! The finish was nice and glossy, and as you can see, it leveled itself above the layer lines. Unfortunately, there was a small bit where I didn't put enough XTC 3D in, but instead of waiting another 4 hours for a second coating, I decided I would hide it with weathering. In retrospect, I regret this a lot, but oh well, you do not have to make my mistakes, so don't wait that 4 hours. It's worth it, trust me. I considered sanding the XTC down with a 400 grit sandpaper, but since it was already really smooth, I wanted to see if I could skip that step and just jump right into priming. So I tried some automotive primer and it bonded perfectly. The primer is matte, so you lose some of the gloss finish, but it's totally still as smooth as I needed. Now that priming was complete, it's time for some lacquer. I went with a Brass Testors One Coat spray can lacquer. It's not my favorite lacquer, but it worked in a pinch. If I had some more time, I would probably have used an all-clad lacquer, or honestly, even some nice metallic acrylic paints. Here's what the lacquer looks like when it's wet. It has a bit of a glittery quality, which is off-putting, but that mostly goes away when it dries, and it ends up a pretty dull brass, but it totally still reads as metal. Next up is weathering. I went pretty basic on this and used some black and brown acrylics mixed up to how I like it. I took the paint and mushed it into the recesses of the necklace and wiped most of the excess away. It took me a bit of fiddling to get just the right amount of dirt and grime on this, but thankfully this step is really forgiving and you can pretty much take as much time as you need to. Just use a wet paper towel to take away a lot of the excess and a dry paper towel to take away a little bit of it. I also decided just to use the blacks and the browns in the recesses and not go over any highlights with lighter colors. I may change that later, but I thought it might look over-weathered if I went too far with it. Now that painting is out of the way, I just needed some nylon rope to use as a necklace to tie the pendant to. Following my reference, I ran the two pieces of rope through the hoop from the back and up through the loop of the rope, and I closed it off with a quick square knot. I'll probably use a latch in the future, but since I didn't have one on hand, this worked just fine. And there you have it! I hope you all enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun. It was a really quick, easy little project, and I hope you guys give it a shot. Grace should be back next week, so go ahead and say hi to her when she is. Take care, everyone!